My name is Mary Faulkner, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters Duluth, as well as a trained and certified moderator. I have the pleasure of moderating this forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters Duluth, I would like to welcome everyone. The League of Women Voters is pleased to present this General Issues Pre-Primary Forum for the State Senate District 7. Thank you, candidates, for your willingness to participate in state government and in this forum. The League of Women Voters believes that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective democracy. The League is open to membership for men and women who are interested in nonpartisan civic participation. The League of Women Voters Duluth realizes that creative and innovative policies and practices are forged out of diverse points of view. We believe diverse perspectives are necessary for responsible and representative decision-making. Let us pause to acknowledge our commitment to welcome and facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our work. We strive to include people from a mix of abilities and backgrounds in all our activities. And you are invited to join us. For more information, check out our website at www.lwvduluth.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that works at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we, as a league, do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed at tonight's forum are those of the participating candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters Duluth. Additionally, League of Women Voters sponsorship of this forum is not a league endorsement of any of the individual candidates participating. Please remember to exercise your right to vote in the primary on Tuesday, August 11th. At this time, I would like to introduce the candidates, Donna Bergstrom, Jen McEwen, and Eric Simonson. Our forum will begin with the candidates giving a 2-minute opening statement, followed by a questioning round. Questions have been vetted by our organizing committee. Candidates were not given the questions in advance. Each candidate will be given up to 1.5 minutes in which to provide their responses. The questioning round has been set up so that each candidate will be asked questions in a rotating order. The order in which candidates will respond was determined at random, and we will rotate the responses throughout the forum. After the questioning round is completed, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement prior to the end of the forum. The candidates will now provide their prepared opening statements. We will begin with candidate Bergstrom.
Bonjour, Anishinaabe Dug, Donna Bergstrom, Indigenous Cause, Misquagamiwizaga Eganegan Dunjaba, Mikasian Dudame, Onigami Singinda, Chimigwich Gichimanidu, Chimigwich, League of Women Voters. Hello, I'm Donna Bergstrom. I introduced myself in Ojibwe, the original language of the first keepers of this land we called Duluth, or Nogimising. I'm so proud of my American Indian heritage and believe that the story of the 21st century Indians is a lesson of survival, adaptability, and hope for all of America. I hold fast to my 7 grandfather teachings, survivability, which are bravery, humility, honesty, truth, respect, and wisdom, and love. As a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Marine Corps, I believe my commitment to public service continues even today. When I see the direction of our country, our state, and our community is heading down the path of socialism, I will not be silent. In 2018, I was the endorsed Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor with Jeff Johnson for governor, one of only 2 American Indian women to run for Lieutenant Governor in Minnesota's general election. What an honor. As I've traveled around Minnesota, I heard the fatigue in citizens' voices that enough is enough. Minnesotans want governing through common sense, not nonsense. I've met and worked with many of our legislative body members today. In 2016, I was the endorsed Republican candidate for State Senate 7, this very seat. I pointed out that Minnesota's out-of-home foster care for Native American children was the highest in the nation, and we needed to address that. The number one indicator for homeless youth was if they had been in foster care. I pointed out that Minnesota had some of the worst graduation rates and educational disparity rates in non-white students, and that we were failing them. We needed to start pilot programs. I also mentioned that we had missing and murdered Native women and children that needed help. Yet in 4 years, Eric Simonson has done nothing to alleviate any of these situations. I'm afraid I have to agree with Jen McEwen, who has said Eric is a do-nothing Democrat. But I do know that this is one of the things that we can correct. Duluth deserves better. I'm Donna Bergstrom, a veteran Native American adoptive mother who has devoted my life to public service. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson?
Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I think this is really important to give Duluthians the opportunity to see us in this setting. It's very difficult right now during this pandemic to get out and have conversations with people, and especially in group settings. It's not going to happen this year, so appreciate this. My name is Eric Simonson. I've lived, born and raised in Duluth my entire life. Spent 27 years here as a career firefighter. I was first elected to the Minnesota House in 2012, spent 2 terms there, was elected to the Senate in 2016. I'm very proud of my record. In spite of what we just heard, I would argue that the Minnesota Senate has been under Republican control since 2016. And perhaps that is why some of the things that were mentioned, which I 100% agree with we should do, did not get done. It's been difficult. This would be the completion of my 6th year in the minority party, and it has been difficult, but I have figured out a way to get things done for Duluth, and I have been a tremendous advocate for Duluth. We've been able to preserve jobs, we've been able to grow our economy, we've been able to secure capital investment dollars, and we've been able to make progress. And we do that by building bridges, by building relationships with the other party, and working across the aisle every single day to try to get things done for our community and for our region. And I'm proud of that work. We have a long ways to go. We don't know what 2021 will bring us, but the reason that I'm running for this seat again is because it's so important to have strong leadership in this position. It's so important to have experience. The legislature is a very much seniority-based system, and I think that as we move through this recession and try to recover from it, Duluth will be well positioned, and I want to be in this seat going forward. So I appreciate the time and the opportunity and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I want to thank you, Mary, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this candidate forum today and for the work the League does to uphold and strengthen our democracy. We know that we are living in difficult times. The pandemic has sparked a painful wave of job losses and business closures here in Duluth and around the country. Nationwide protests have challenged us to confront long-standing inequities in our society. But even before the pandemic, many of us struggled to make ends meet and to find decent, affordable housing. Many of us, even those of us with insurance, have been forced to make the awful choice between seeing a doctor and paying other bills. And with every passing year, the realities of the climate crisis become more and more apparent. The time to act is now. It is no longer enough to say we support things like universal health care and affordable housing. It is not enough to say we support a transition to clean energy or that we believe in racial equality. We must fight for these things. As an attorney for disabled workers, I have fought insurance companies that deny people benefits. As board president of the Damiano Center, I've worked to provide food security and other help to struggling families. I will bring that same passion to my work as a state senator, and I will never treat my legislative seat as a tool for personal advancement. I'm proud that my campaign has brought together people from a wide range of backgrounds and perspectives. We can build a clean energy economy. We can have health care for all. We can and we must build a Duluth and a Minnesota that are better and stronger than they were before. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now begin our questioning period. These questions were solicited and submitted by the organizing committee. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, and we will begin with candidate McEwen. What are the top 3 goals that you hope to achieve if elected to this position?
Thank you for that question. So, number one, I think what the role of a state senator is to bring in the resources from the state to help our local government. So first and foremost, as a state senator, I'm going to be working to bring home state dollars, local government aid for our basic infrastructure, for streets, for water infrastructure, and for the other city services that are vital to everyday Duluthians. And why that's really important also is that helps our local officials hold the line on property taxes. Property taxes are actually a very regressive tax, in particular for people on fixed incomes. We have many people in Duluth who are on fixed incomes, and when they see their property taxes rise, that's a real problem for them. So by bringing in more state dollars and revenue from the state to apply here locally, that's the first job of a state senator. So that is my first priority. After that, I'm going to be working on adopting and implementing health care for all in Minnesota. Senator John Marty has proposed the Minnesota Health Plan, and I will not only sign on to support that legislation, I will build coalition, and I will fight to make it a reality. The third issue that I would bring up is the elephant in the room, and that is our climate crisis. Northeastern Minnesota is at a particularly vulnerable position with the climate crisis, being dependent on extractive industry to the extent we are. So the time is now to work together to transition to a clean energy economy.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to recognize the 2021 legislature, when it convenes in January, will be facing either the depths of a recession or the beginnings of a recovery from a recession. We're projecting right now about a $2.5 billion shortfall in the state government budget. The state doesn't have the options that the federal government does. We have to balance a budget, and that'll be the main objective of the 2021 session. And it's going to be important that we keep that in mind as we go forward and be careful about the promises that we make to people. Balancing a $2.5 billion deficit is not an easy task. We've seen the state of Minnesota struggle with these deficits in the past, and we know what it means to some of our local units of government and to some of our educational facilities and our prisons and our public safety. It's going to have a very negative effect, and it's going to be important that we keep that in mind. My top 3 priorities are going to be what I'm hearing about from people on the street: affordable health care, access to jobs, and access to affordable housing. These should be our priorities. But none of these things are going to happen very easily as long as the Republicans control the Senate. That's going to be the top priority, I think, going forward if we want to resolve this in such a way that we don't continue to disrupt local units of government and local communities.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom.
Thank you, Mary. That was a great question. For myself, I often think of myself as the only elephant in the room, but it's been pointed out, no, there's 2 elephants in the room, so thank you for that. But for me, my top priority is education, and I hold a Minnesota substitute teacher license. Education is so critical to us, and for years now I've been saying that we've been failing our students over and over, and we just keep dumping money into the system, which isn't creating any solutions. It's not about money. It's about recognizing that our children deserve an education where their skills and abilities are recognized, and we have 21st century tools that they use. From our K to 3, I've said this before, we need to cap our classrooms. That's when they're learning to read before they read to learn. So education is a huge priority for me, and I will work on that tirelessly. I think lawlessness is one of the things that is really something that we need to tackle right now. I've seen over and over how lawlessness has just been able to run rampant, and we cannot tolerate that. We are a nation of laws. The third thing that I'll be fighting for, and this ties into number 2, is that we're really fighting for our way of life, and we cannot afford to lose the Senate. We need to have Republicans there holding the line against this government overreach and against all of this ways into our life that the government is trying to intrude. We need to fight for our freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will begin with candidate Simonson. In your opinion, what are the most important challenges facing our region, and how do you propose to address those challenges?
Good question. I think, our challenges have changed in the last several months. A year ago, or even as late as last fall, Duluth was well positioned with a growing economy, low unemployment numbers, and a lot of opportunities sitting in front of us. With the pandemic, obviously our community has not escaped the impacts of that, much like every community across our state. So our number one challenge before us is going to be, how do we recover from this? How do we keep our economy open and running as best that we can, while at the same time continuing our work to try to flatten the curve of this pandemic? We're seeing other states that are having significant spikes after reopening. And our hope, even navigating through the rest of this session, is that we can continue to see Minnesota hold its numbers down, because it's the last thing that we want to do is see our economy shut down again for any period of time. So this recovery period over this year and the coming years is going to be critically important. And how we manage that and how we still make the investments into our priorities, such as education, local units of government, affordable housing, those are going to be critical. And how we do that is going to be determined by how the results of this election go. But definitely our top priority is going to be making sure that we minimize the impact of local taxpayers and that we continue to try to retain and grow jobs here in our region.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think the most significant challenge right now in our community is opening our economy, getting our small businesses and our businesses back open and running. I've heard from folks over and over that even with the relief that was afforded to them through the grants and loans, some of those aren't even coming through. We have businesses that are having to lay people off. They're closing down. They're not opening back up. They're going across into other state lines. South Dakota has been an excellent example of how to operate in this pandemic, and they haven't had to close anything down. So I think our economy is number one. I think tax relief would be a great benefit to many. And the second thing that I see in our community is just allowing people to know that there is hope out there, that this too can be overcome, and that in many cases what we have here is so many different voices coming in and trying to explain away what is happening, but the reality is that we know that in our area we have a very low incident and propensity for this virus, and so I think we need to get our schools back open, we need to get our businesses back open, we need people to know that they can keep functioning in our society as they had done, with the cautions that make most sense to them, and so that is the things that I would say are most pressing to our area right now.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen.
Thank you for this question about the challenges that our community is facing. So one thing that I haven't heard yet, and that is the biggest challenge for our region and for our community, is how we are going to transition our economy in northeastern Minnesota to a clean energy economy. Before the pandemic, again, we were facing some very serious challenges. We had already a healthcare crisis. We already had a housing crisis. In Duluth, on any given night, over 200 people sleep outside. In Duluth, Minnesota. We all know what our winters are like. But the climate crisis, the transition that we're going to have to make, this is real. The climate crisis is real. Scientists across the world have told us that we have about 10 years to make this transition, and that this is make or break for the climate. So what we have to do is begin making that transition now. It makes economic sense. It's ethically the correct thing to do. And if we don't make the challenge, we're going to be left high and dry economically. So this is about workers in our community and preparing for the future and building a better future for one another. I want to challenge this myth that we have scarcity in our society. We do not have scarcity. We have plenty. We are the wealthiest nation to ever exist on the planet. The wealth is there. The resources are there. Now is not the time to pull back. In a recession, we know from history, from the Great Depression, that when you're experiencing depression or recession, that is the time to invest. So now is the time to invest and to make those transitions and to tackle those challenges.
Thank you. And we're going to begin the next question with you. And that question is, what can be done to ensure that every citizen has the ability to vote and have their vote counted without undue burden?
I think for our voting rights have been under attack throughout the country. Luckily, here in Minnesota, we have a really robust, strong election system, very transparent. Our institutions are holding strong through all of these assaults that we've seen nationally on voting rights. So I think there's some key things that we can do right now. There have been thousands and thousands of Minnesotans who have already requested their absentee ballots. That's been encouraged by our Secretary of State and by our administration, and that's proper. We should continue that, and we should pursue more voting by mail and see how we can streamline that process even more for people and to make it very easy for people to do that. So I would continue on the path that we're on here in Minnesota by strengthening our and fortifying our laws. We have same-day registration here in Minnesota. That's excellent as well. And just be on the lookout for those attacks against our voting rights.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson?
Thank you. I don't disagree with anything that was just said. Minnesota has the opportunity in front of it with absentee, no questions asked absentee voting that really allows anybody that wants to vote to do so, and to do so from home right now, which I think is critically important. I don't think that when we passed that law that we envisioned a pandemic playing into the equation, but nonetheless it has. And it has really provided opportunities for those that don't wish to gather at polling places right now, the opportunity to still have their voices heard. And I think that's a critical component of our democracy. So I definitely will continue to protect that and try to expand access for voters. This same-day registration is really important. But as was said, this oftentimes is under attack, and not for good reason. There's a lot of accusations about voter fraud and things happening, but what we're seeing come out of the Secretary of State's office doesn't support that. Secretary of State Steve Simon is doing a great job, and I look forward to working with him going forward, but we need to try to continue to make every opportunity available for folks to vote. It is an absolute critical component of our democracy, and I continue to support that.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom?
Yes, thank you for the question. So there's two components to that. The first you spoke of is to ensure everyone is able to vote, and I think Minnesota has proven that their absentee voting is a way to do that. And then you said also about making sure that everyone vote counts. And that's what really concerns me, because even now we see that Minneapolis has not been following the Minnesota statute and how that absentee ballot boards are assigned. And so when you want to make sure that everybody's vote counts, when I go to the polls, I want to make sure that my vote is counted in the way that I had intended it to be. So I think one of the most important things that we can introduce is voter ID. I want to know that the person that's voting is the person that's allowed to vote. I want to know that voter integrity exists. I want to know that when my ballot goes into that either absentee ballot box or comes in through the counting machine, that that vote is going to go to the candidate that I intended. And so I think we really need to ensure that our voter laws are followed. And in the Help America Vote Act, one of the things specifically that they addressed was to conduct post-election audits to check the accuracy of the vote count. And as of yet, Minnesota has not implemented that, nor it has not come out of the legislature or from Secretary of State Simon. So that is something we absolutely need to get on the books. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start the next question with you. It is, how can state government, in collaboration with other levels of government, help address racial and cultural divides in public safety?
And thank you. For public safety, that is one of the main components of government. And as a person of color, I am a Native American, and so I know that I have been introduced to racism not because of my choosing, but because of others. And one of the things that I want to make sure that when I go out into public, that I know I'm going to be treated fairly as a law-abiding citizen. I know that I should have every right to be out in the community and expect that. And I would expect all of our citizens to expect that too. But when it comes to ensuring our public safety, I think one of the things we need to look at with a critical eye is safety within our training, how our law enforcement and peace officers are trained, how their supervisors are trained, and then how the recruitment is done. Are they recruiting from within the community so that we have people in the community working in those communities? And I think that's certainly something that I can translate from my military experience. When we had a crisis occur, we needed to look 360. What were other services doing? What were other people similarly situated to us doing? So we did a 360 look, and we incorporated some of those ideas, and that would be the same way that I would approach it with this one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen.
Thank you for this question about public safety. Obviously, this has been at the front of all of our minds these last couple of months, in particular since the murder of George Floyd and all of the social unrest that occurred, not just here in our own state, but across the nation. We've been doing a real deep examination of what our public safety apparatus should really look like. And that's right, and that's proper. One of the first things that our state government should do, and I wish that that had already happened, I think it would have if it were not for Republican leadership obstructing that progress, but there is a people of color and indigenous legislative caucus made up of people of color and indigenous members of the legislature who put forward a slate of very comprehensive, common sense, frankly long overdue reforms. So these were just reforms to our safety apparatus here in Minnesota. They did not call for defunding the police or police abolition in any way, but it was legislation that would allow communities to take a look at what our public safety looks like. Are we weak in certain areas? Do we need more social workers? Do we need more healthcare providers? So that legislation should be passed right away. It's the baseline of what the state should be doing, what the state of Minnesota should be doing now.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson.
I think it's really important for privileged white people like myself to acknowledge that there is a problem. I think that is the very first step in solving any sort of a problem, and this one is going to be very challenging and very difficult for us to find a solution for. I think it's also important to recognize that the state of Minnesota is about 5.7 million people in population. We've got about 850 cities all across the state, as well as a number of state organizations. And part of your question was about how do units of government work together to try to find solutions. And I think it's important to recognize that every particular police department that's out there is not going to be the same. I'm very proud of the work that the Duluth Police Department has done over the years under the guidance of both Chief Ramsey and now Chief Tuscan. And I think that myself, having worked side by side with police officers for so long, am very appreciative and would be the first to admit that the vast majority of police officers out there are doing a good job and want to continue to do that job. That being said, we know there's a problem, and the key is communication. We have to open communications between state government, counties, cities, townships, and have these discussions. And I want to point out that this is not a new discussion. This has been going on for a while. So continuing this discussion and finding these resolves will be a top priority going forward.
Thank you. And the next question will be back to you. How can state government, again in collaboration with other forms of government, provide an equitable, quality public education for all children, pre-K through grade 12?
This is one of the cornerstones of what government is about. This is one of the top things that we should be doing and that we should be funding. And yet every year we seem to struggle to be able to find enough money to put into our public education system. We have a couple of things that are challenging the state of Minnesota. One is that we have about an $800 million gap in terms of our special education reimbursements, and that lies solely at the feet of the federal government and not sending money to Minnesota and to other states, frankly, like they should have. So that leaves Minnesota taxpayers on the hook to try to figure out a way to come up with that amount of money, and it's been an absolute challenge, and we have not yet figured out a way to do that. But we have commitments from some of our federal delegation, including Congressman Stauber, who is committed to trying to find ways to make sure the federal government funds its portion of this subsidy, and that will go a long way. But the state of Minnesota has to make this a priority every single budget cycle to make sure that our kids aren't falling behind. Our gaps in our education system are very evident, and even here in Duluth, you can see it. There's a difference, and we need to figure out ways to get money where it should be, and funding our education system has to be a top priority. But until we fix this federal funding problem, it's going to be really difficult to do.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you. So first off, we need to clean up our government fraud. We have so much waste, fraud, and abuse, and we saw that play out with the MNLARs. We saw that play out with the child care fraud. So we need to make sure that every single tax dollar that comes into the state is spent wisely so that we can fund some of these priorities. Number two, you've heard me say this before, we need to cap our K through 3. That is when our kids are learning to read before they read to learn. That is so critical. It is going to be so difficult if we don't open our schools in the fall, because the children that are under the special education plans, the 504 or the 501 plans, they're going to need that teacher time, and how are we going to do that if our schools aren't open? So we need to make sure that our children are getting the education that they need, and it's not based on what the teacher needs or what the school district needs. It's what the student needs. So it needs to be child focused. And one of the most critical components to knowing what the child needs is the parent. We need to put the control back into the hands of the parent as to the children's education. I would love to see a couple pilot projects started around the state where the money would follow the child and the parents can choose where the child goes. Let's see what those results produce. If it's better for our children, then I think we should follow those models and use that throughout our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen.
Thank you very much for this question. Public education is the foundation of a healthy society. This question is near and dear to my heart. My people in my family are public school teachers and proud public school teachers, both my dad and my spouse. And I am a graduate of our public schools in Duluth, and I have 2 kids in our public schools. So public education is a public good, and it's critically important that it be fully funded. Again, there is not a problem of scarcity in Minnesota, it is a problem of will. So it would be in my intent to fight for full funding for public education, pre-K through postgraduate. The resources are there. We just need to gather people together to make that happen. The other thing that I think is fundamental to changing what we have happening right now is we need to change the way that education is funded. By having education funded by property taxes, that poses a real problem. It creates inequities and exacerbates inequities. And if we had funding coming from the state level, fully funding our public education system throughout the state, then we could provide a much better, much more equitable, fully funded education for all Minnesota kids.
Thank you. And we'll start with you for this next question. What do you believe state government should do to limit the impact of global climate change?
Yes, thank you for this question. I've already talked about it a couple of times, and I have talked about it a couple of times because it is very fundamental. Over these next 10 years, this is going to be a bellwether decade. Are we going to tackle this existential crisis that we are facing that threatens our economy, that threatens our way of life, our environment, our quality of life? Or are we going to sit on our hands or just sort of tinker around the edges? I know that the scientists across the world have been telling governments since I was a kid in the 1980s and 90s, please do something. And frankly, the types of solutions that we've seen proposed and worked on thus far probably would have been good ideas if they were started back in the 90s. But we don't have that kind of time anymore. We're going to have to make a fairly rapid transition. Again, 10 years is what the science is telling us. That said, we can do this. We know that we have the resources, we have the expertise. Here in northern Minnesota, northeastern Minnesota in particular, we have a number of tradespeople who are experts in their fields who can help with this transition. But it will call for investment and it will call for will to make that happen. But we can do it, we will do it.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson.
I think anytime you talk about energy, it's important to consider two terms, affordability and reliability. There is no doubt that we are facing a significant change in our climate, and it is a crisis. I don't disagree with that at all. I think where my passions lie in the energy area, and this is a committee that I've sat on since I started in the legislature, we need to figure out ways to reduce our carbon emissions and at the same time still maintaining our economy. Northeastern Minnesota is a bit of an outlier. Minnesota Power Service Territory is one of the most unique service territories in the nation for the simple fact that just a handful of large power users make up the majority of the revenue that they collect. Our service territory requires a base load of about 1,000 megawatts. We can't do that with 100% renewables. I would argue that all of our IOUs in Minnesota are making significant progress. Xcel recently announced a plan to go to 100% renewables in the very near future, with the presumption that they'll be able to count their nuclear as renewable. Minnesota Power is set to be at 50% by 2021, just next year, and we'll continue that effort. But most of our problems lie in our transmission system. We can only go to about 40% renewables right now before we start to run into problems on our grid, and that's directly from MISO. So we have a lot of work to do, but we will get there. I am confident of that, and we'll continue to work hard on this issue.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you for the question. So one of the things that I did as an intelligence officer in the Marine Corps was follow our climate quite extensively. And we know that there's human-induced climate change and there's natural climate change fluctuations. And one of the important factors in this is the rise and fall of the Earth's temperatures and its cycle in relation to the sun. And so we know that there's activity on the sun that directly impacts us here on Earth. And as an Ojibwe person, I know that my grandmother's grandfathers were tied directly to the celestials. That was one of the most consistent factors we used in determining our lifestyle. So our moon affects our Earth, our sun affects our Earth, and all these things affect us. And one of the also attributes of the Ojibwe culture is to live in balance. And what we also know from our key scientists is that the sun is changing our planet, and there's been a strong influence over the last decade and a half. And they are predicting that it will bring about cold weather to a degree that we haven't seen for decades. So we know that in this balance, we need to recognize the climate changes that happen naturally because it's a climate. And we also need to recognize that people can't be expected to forfeit all of their income and resources on these radical proposals to get rid of the options that we have now. So my plan is to keep all options on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start the next question with you. What are the most important things that should be done to improve the region's economy?
Right, that's a great question. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. To increase our region's economy, we need to look at all of our resources. Right now we have this pandemic, and it's causing our small businesses to adapt and shift in ways that they haven't had to do before. But I look at even just Gordy's Hi-Hat down the road in Cloquet, what an amazing turnaround they made in doing their car hop service. Okay, so there are really smart people out there that know how to tackle this and to get our economy back up and running. And we need to look to those people and ask them, what do you need to do? Again, I've talked to small business owners, particularly some in the industry, and they say the government's over-regulations and burdensome requirements on them are just impossible to deal with. So I think, again, we have to go back to this balance. You have to be able to balance safety with good economic outcomes. And one of the things, too, with our region is that we have three great universities here. And where do our students go after they graduate? A lot of them have to leave this area because there's just simply no jobs for them. So we need to tap into what's happening at those colleges and bring those students, bring those jobs here so our students can stay here. They want to stay here. So we need to work with the colleges and get the jobs here that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen?
Thank you for this question. This goes directly to the need to invest in a new, clean, energy-based economy. Now is the time to change the basis of our economy and to build a clean energy future. By doing this, and in conjunction with the pandemic that has come across us and the recession that we're seeing, the layoffs that we've seen, we know that now is the time to invest in our economy. Now is not the time to pull back. So by making investments toward a green, clean energy economy, this will usher in a type of renaissance, truly, an economic renaissance for northeastern Minnesota by creating a number of jobs in the trades, trickled jobs throughout our economy. And it really will usher in a better future, and it provides an amazing opportunity for us here in Duluth to lead the way. So out of these difficult times, out of the pandemic, and out of the climate crisis that's upon us, we do have this unique opportunity in this moment and in this time to expand and to move forward with a healthy industrialization, with a clean energy economy that will create jobs.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson.
Thank you for the question. As a member of the Senate Jobs and Economic Development Committee, this is something that we spend a lot of time on. And again, the world has changed in the last 6 months. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about trying to figure out ways to incentivize the development of vacant brownfields that we have in our community, and looking at attracting new employers to come in and provide those jobs so that our graduating seniors, whether it be from high school or out of the trades or out of one of our higher education facilities, had a place to go to work. We've had to shift because we've seen employers are closing down because of this pandemic. The market is changing. Demand is dropping. And right now we are in a reactionary mode trying to figure out ways to keep those employers open, to try to incentivize ways to keep those plants that have closed back open again, and trying to figure out ways that we as a state government can facilitate that to happen. I believe pretty strongly that the market drives what the economy does and how quickly it develops. But in government, we have the opportunity to create those opportunities for them and help them along the way. And I think our discussions in committee have been lately around how do we kind of modify some of the programs that we have in place to make sure that prospective employers have opportunities to develop here.
Thank you. And with the next question, we'll begin with you. In 2019, a bill was introduced to the Minnesota Senate requiring law enforcement to report immigration status of felony arrestees. Another bill restricted state and local officials from cooperating with federal immigration enforcement efforts. What is your position in regard to state and local law enforcement's relationship to immigration enforcement?
Yeah, these are touchy subjects and very challenging. And when we have partisan government, you often see things like this happening. We need to be very careful about how we address this. We want to make sure that our immigrant communities feel comfortable here, that they feel welcome here, that when they do come here, they have opportunities to become a valuable part of our society. And the idea that law enforcement is going to be some sort of a filter for that, I disagree with that 100%. I think we all probably have come from some sort of an immigrant status at some point in time, with the exception perhaps of candidate Bergstrom, who's from here. But I think it's important that we remember that, and we remember the struggles that our ancestors have faced, and as we go forward, the struggles that new generations will face. And there's no reason why we need to make things more difficult for them to have the opportunity to survive and to thrive and to be part of our society, and to have access to our education systems and all of our programs, and to be able to seek employment. And be a part of our society. So I disagree with those bills, and I think sometimes things get introduced on a partisan basis for a reason, but generally 100% in disagreement with that.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you for the question. And again, I think it always goes back to balance. I'm an adoptive mother of a son from Guatemala. So he is a legal immigrant here by virtue of our adoption of him through the birth process. One of the things that his birth family wanted to make sure was that they were giving their son a better chance than what they would be able to afford him in Guatemala, because that is a nation that has spiraled into lawlessness. And one of the things that we were told by the family was that they were so proud that they were able to facilitate an adoption for their son to be in America, where they knew that it was a nation of laws, where they were going to be able to know that their son was going to be able to grow up strong with freedoms and liberties that he wouldn't have been able to have in Guatemala. I will not let our nation spiral down into this lawlessness. We need to uphold our laws. We are a nation of laws. If you want to immigrate here legally, do so. There's a paperwork and a process that you need to follow to do that. I do not believe in sanctuary cities. I believe if that's the way that an area wants to run itself, they need to be stepped down from their office, because that is not the way that our nation was founded. We are a nation of immigrants, absolutely. We also have our Native American community here too, and we have worked well together, and I think that we can have a balance going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen.
Thank you for this question. Over these past 4 years, we have seen a truly scary, xenophobic, hateful attack on immigrants in our communities. That attack has trickled down into our local politics. We've seen recently the county board vote on deciding whether or not to be a welcoming county, and we had some difficulties there because of some Trump-allied commissioners. So this hate has to stop. It's been out of control. And of course we should be welcoming our immigrant communities. Of course they should feel welcome here. We should take every opportunity to really live out our values, the best of what our values can be, to be a welcoming nation. Right now it's extremely difficult for immigrants to make that transition to come to the United States legally. And the immigrants who have come to seek refugee status have been criminalized by our own government. So when we talk about lawlessness, right now in the past 4 years, we've been under a system where our own government has been breeding lawlessness. And our own history in the United States, of course, to those of us who have studied it, we know that our government's part, particularly in Central America, and the instability of those governments there is key. Not just part and parcel, but fundamental to the instability in Central America. So absolutely, as a state senator, I would be advocating at every opportunity for the rights of our immigrant population and people living here, our immigrant brothers and sisters and siblings here in Minnesota, to feel safe and welcome.
Thank you. We'll have our final question, and then we'll move on to closing statements. For our final question, we'll begin with you, Candidate McEwen. How do you define leadership?
Oh, that's a great question. So leadership, this is a wonderful question for somebody who is seeking to be an elected official. One of the reasons that I am seeking to be an elected official is because of having seen what I have perceived as a vacuum of leadership or a lack of leadership in many areas. So when I think about leadership, I don't want someone who is going to be going along to get along all the time, right? I'm an attorney by trade. I represent disabled workers against insurance companies, and my job is to fight for my clients, to engage and go to battle against people every day, but at the same time, to maintain relationship with those people, to maintain a working collegial relationship where we can come to compromise, where we can build coalition together. And oftentimes what we see is leadership that is going along to get along, that is coming to a negotiating table with a compromise already, who aren't asking really for what we want. If we never ask for what we want, we're never going to get it. We're not going to come close. So in my mind, leadership is making that fight, fighting for what you believe in, leading by example, and then also knowing how to build coalition and to bring people together at the end of the day so that you can get some really substantive, good work done.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson.
It's a very good question, and I think there's as many different answers as you possibly could imagine out there. And it means different things to different people. But to me, leadership is about giving voices to those that don't necessarily have them heard as loudly as they should. And that's what I've tried to do over the last 8 years and the last 4 years in the Senate. Even though we've not been in positions to get done many of the things that folks would like to get done, we've had the ability to build those bridges and make those relationships and make those connections so that we could do the very best that we could. I am not one to get into arguments with people and fight with people and try to get a point across in that way. I'm much more, my background in negotiating labor contracts probably set the stage for this, but I'm one to come to the table and work to find a solution, and I'm willing to sit at that table until we find one. And that means working across the aisle. People don't always want to see knockdown, drag-out fights over things. There are times when we do that, yes. But ultimately, we need to produce results. That's what leaders do. And I'm proud of my record as a leader and hope to continue that going forward. I think it's really important to recognize that you represent a district of almost 80,000 people, and those 80,000 people have voices. And perhaps one small pocket doesn't always get the things that they want, but you try to find a balance, and that's what leadership is.
Thank you. Candidate Bergstrom.
Thank you. That's a great question. So leadership is graduating first generation from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities with very minimal government help. Leadership is accepting a commission as a second lieutenant of the United States Marine Corps and going on to being promoted 4 times and retiring as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps. Leadership is knowing that a leader eats last. They take care of other people first. Leadership is inspiring others. Leadership is doing what is right when no one is looking. And if that is what you agree with as far as a leader and what leadership is, then I am your candidate for state senate because I embody that. I did graduate from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, first generation. My family was so proud of me, and I'm 5th of 7 children. I did it primarily on my own. Then I went on into the Marine Corps. I went through the officer candidate program. I graduated from there. I think approximately 87 of us women started out and about 22 of us graduated. Leadership is what we do in the Marine Corps. The Marines are known as leaders. And as a military officer, I take an additional oath to knowing that I am always being looked at, that people are looking at me to inspire them and to lead them to doing the right thing. And as a state senator, I would use those same skills that I learned in the Marine Corps to be your state senator. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will ask each candidate to give a 2-minute closing statement. We will start with candidate Bergstrom.
Chimigwich, League of Women Voters, Chimigwich Mary, thank you so much, Eric and Jen, for joining in this great discussion today. Every election is important. We always hear that. But recent events have made this the most important election in our nation and in our state. Not a single leader within the DFL party was willing to take a stand against the physical destruction of our cities and the terrorizing of our citizenry. And everyone should know that this was much less about Black Lives Matter, which of course they do, but about whether the constitutional republic established in the late 18th century should survive or whether the forces of destruction or anarchy will prevail. I served our country as the United States Marine. I swore to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I took that oath upon commissioning and each subsequent promotion. I continue to believe in the United States of America. I have lived and served in many climes and places. With unwavering resolve, I know that America is a system that is envied around the world. I am the right voice for right now. It is time. I would be the first Native American woman to serve in the Minnesota State Senate. So if you are looking for a person to work with the People of Color Indigenous Caucus, I am it. Let's make history, Duluth, by sending a woman veteran to St. Paul to represent us. I am a testament to the American dream and a beacon of hope for others. I will work to bring common sense solutions to our Minnesota government, solutions that are people-centered, that hold government accountable, that limit the overreach of government, that respects and supports our law enforcement because we are a nation of laws. In the Ojibwe culture, we look out 7 generations in our decision-making. I think we need to use those practices here. Let's bring that balance back to our state government. Our future is about learning from our history, not destroying it. I am Donna Bergstrom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate McEwen?
Thank you very much. I want to thank both Donna and Eric today for joining in this forum, this voter forum. And I want to thank again the League of Women Voters for hosting this. It's been a pleasure to be here today, discussing our most pressing issues and the ways we want to build a better future for our community together. My roots in Duluth run deep. Before their retirements, my mom was a nurse at St. Mary's, and my dad was a teacher in the Duluth public schools. As a parent of 2 children in our public schools, I'm looking to the future. I understand that the choices we make now will not only determine how we come through this time, but will also chart the path for the kind of future we want for ourselves, for our children, and for the generations to come. I am ready to work alongside you with courage and integrity to take on our challenges. I will make it a priority to bring home state dollars for basic needs like streets, water infrastructure, and city services, so that our local government can provide for the needs of residents while holding the line on property taxes. We need a state senator who understands the urgency of the serious issues that confront us, and who is ready to build bridges across the entire state. The time is now to build a more equitable, resilient economy, to fight for health care and housing for all, and to confront the challenges we face with real action. I ask for your support and your vote in our DFL primary coming up this August. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Simonson.
Well, thank you, and thanks again to the League for hosting this event. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Donna. This has been a good conversation, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do this. It's really important as we go forward, both for the August primary as well as a general election. But as I've said a couple times today, 2021 is going to be extremely challenging for the state legislature. They're right now we're projecting about a $2.5 billion deficit, and that is not an easy thing to resolve. There are going to be a lot of discussions around what programs are important, what are priorities for the state of Minnesota, what is it that our local units of government are seeking, what do we need to do to make sure that things that are pillars of our state economy remain in place, our educational system. What do we need to do to get that done? And I believe that in my time in the legislature, 2 terms in the House, 1 full term in the Senate, I believe that I've proven Duluth and the constituents that I serve that I have the ability to work with them all and to try to find solutions. Again, I don't pretend to admit that we always agree on everything. Clearly, you can see here that we do not. But I would bet you that all three of us would agree that we want to see Duluth prosper. We want Duluth to be a strong economy, and we want Duluth to be a better place for our kids and for all of our residents here. And that's what I'm focused on. As I talk to voters all across Duluth right now, there are three primary things on people's minds. One is how they're going to continue to pay for their health insurance. Are they going to be working? Are they going to be able to continue to make those premiums? Two, what are they going to do about a job? They see places closing. They see unemployment running out very soon. They don't see a lot of brightness on the horizon, and I think we need to make sure that we are providing that glimmer of hope for them going forward. And I'm willing to do this work. I'm proud of what I've done, and I'm proud of where we're going, and I look forward to serving you as another term. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the candidate forum for the State Senate District 7. It is our purpose in sponsoring meetings such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to you. There is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, you should feel free to contact the candidates directly. We hope this program has helped you learn more about the candidates and the issues, so that you can make informed choices at the polls on primary day, Tuesday, August 11th. We thank the candidates, PACT-TV, and you for making this event possible. Thank you for coming, and remember to vote for the candidates of your choice. PACT-TV will carry this forum and others. Check their listings for the schedule of times. Thank you, everyone.